do we actually potentially have some racing on our hands this year? The Bahrain Grand Prix was the opening round of the 2020 season, and damn, or should I say, damn, did we have a bit of a race on our hands. I think Mercedes might be getting a little hot under the collar, a bit sweaty on the brow, because Red Bull seriously do seem to be a bit of a threat this year. Now, I would be lying if I said I didn't think it was all going to be a bit of a ruse and that Mercedes would just disappear with it as they usually do. Anyway, we've had testing seasons before where Mercedes have looked not very good, and then you come to the first round of the season and oh look, they're 20 seconds down the road and no one can catch them. So I was cautious. I was slightly cynical, if you will, to think that Mercedes were once again pulling their usual stint of we're not that good, but actually the car's amazing, we're just not showing its full potential. But the Bahrain Grand Prix did finally give us our first look at what the competitive order might be for the 2021 season. Now, qualifying in itself, I always still take with a pinch of salt. To me, the first real look at the grid and the competitive order was Sunday's race, because at that point, the gloves are off, the sandbagging stopped, the engine modes are pretty equal. Qualifying was a bit of an eye-opener. Maybe Red Bull showed they were closer than I thought they were going to be. But again, for me, it's still a case of if you're good over one lap, that's great, but it doesn't necessarily convert to race pace. Luckily, it seems I was wrong, and I'm more than happy to be wrong in this instance. As I keep saying, Red Bull really did come out of the box this year. They came out really strong in qualifying, Verstappen on pole in qualifying. Perez unfortunately had issues in qualifying and the race, which did kind of put him on the back foot, but still, I think he did a very, very good job at the Bahrain weekend. Really strong performance from him. And I think it's finally, for me, if I was Red Bull, I'd be like, okay, finally, this is what we needed. We have Verstappen, who we are, building the team around, and he will be our next champion. We want him to be the next champion. He's come through the Red Bull driver program, very similar pathing to Vettel. But Perez is consistent, he's strong, he's fast, he's experienced. And I think that's the biggest difference we have here compared to the other drivers that Red Bull have had in that second seat in years gone by. Now, let me clarify. I'm not saying that the drivers that were in that seat before Perez were bad. Absolutely not. What I'm saying is they were promoted too fast, you threw a lot of pressure at them, and they crumbled. Look at Gasly now. He's absolutely thriving in AlphaTauri. He's got little pressure. In my opinion, he needs to get out of the Red Bull system, because there's no way they'll re-promote him. That's definitely not what Red Bull do. And although moving to hire someone like Perez this season is very much not what Red Bull do, I think it's finally the moment that they've realized, oh, if we give our young drivers a little bit more time to actually learn Formula One and develop racecraft and get used to these cars, maybe when we promote them to the senior team, they won't be rubbish. Again, not saying that they're rubbish, but I hope the point's getting across. I'm not saying these drivers are bad. I'm saying Red Bull promoted them too fast. It was a real shame that Verstappen didn't win the race, if I'm honest, because I feel like that would have really been a bit of a, oh, damn moment for Mercedes, and it really would have started to rack up that pressure. And I'm not sure, Mercedes is a very strong team, don't get me wrong, but they've not ever really been under any form of pressure in the last 6 years, really. Since the hybrids came in, V6 turbos came in, it's been Mercedes at the front, it's been Mercedes leading the pack. They've had a couple of seasons where there's had a little bit of a threat from Red Bull or a little bit of a threat from Ferrari. It's not been consistent through the season. They've always had the edge. So yes, they've kind of felt the pressure a little bit, but not so much that I think they've been like, okay, we might lose a race or two, we're still going to win the championship. Consistently over the year, we're still the fastest car. This year, it actually feels like they might have a fight. And Red Bull is usually very good on aero-focused tracks anyway. That's just because it's an aero-designed car. So to see Red Bull really bringing the fight on a circuit like Bahrain, which has got some super long straights, which has got a lot of engine dependence on it, that's really good news. And I would have liked to see Verstappen win the race, because I think it would have been a moment where Mercedes really did start to quake in their boots. Red Bull had the advantage on Saturday. They sure as hell had the advantage on Sunday. A little bit of a strategical decision there kind of lost them that race, I think. And Obviously, I think Verstappen's desperation to get the lead at the end really showed through, which is why he ended up making that mistake. And you gotta hand it to Hamilton. He's a very clever racing driver. He knew exactly where to put that car to kind of say, look, Maxi boy, if you want to overtake me, you're going off the circuit. So speaking of going off the circuit, yes, what the hell, FIA? If you're gonna monitor a corner, I thought we monitored the corner the entire weekend, not just qualifying. As far as I'm concerned, whenever we've been monitoring corners in the past year or so, it's always been throughout the entire weekend. So if they run wide in a race at that corner as well, they get penalized. They get 3 warnings and then they get a time penalty. So I don't know how Mercedes was getting away with utilizing that. And it is a bit of a punch in the face to kind of have the one moment that it was utilized to take the lead that was against Mercedes, that was when it would have got penalized. A little bit of a bitter taste there, which is a little bit frustrating. And I kind of don't agree with that at all. I don't understand why that wasn't being monitored through the entire race. I thought it was. So when we found out that Mercedes kept using that area of the track and running wide, which of course is an advantage, which is why they blocked the advantage in qualifying. It was very confusing to me why that wasn't being monitored. For the Verstappen overtake, yes, he left the circuit. That's cut and dry, unfortunately. I don't even think the FIA, well, actually, did the FIA tell him to? I think the FIA did tell him to give the position back. I can't remember now. But it was cut and dry. He totally left the circuit. And when he did it, I was like, you're going to have to give that back. And I mean, from Verstappen's perspective, he was like, I don't care. I'm faster. Let me go build the gap. I can build the 5-second gap. Which would have worked, I guess. But yeah, a bit of a bitter taste to the end of the race. But at least we're kind of given the taste it, if you will, that we actually might have a fight in our hands. Fingers crossed that remains, and the fight does remain between Red Bull and Mercedes this season, because that would be amazing to actually have a fight at the front. We haven't had it for so many years. It's going to be between 4 cars, but at least 4 cars, 2 teams, not 2 cars, 1 team, you know what I mean? Moving slightly down the grid now to what I believe is our next battle. So we've got a P1 battle, and I also think we have a P3 battle, because the Ferrari and the McLaren seem to be very tightly matched. That's the word I wanted. Which is really cool. I think that's going to be awesome to see that kind of fight. Obviously, now with McLaren having the Mercedes engine, they do have a power advantage on Ferrari. It does look like Ferrari has made positive steps with their engine. It does seem to be a bit faster now, which is great. Always good to see Ferrari up the front. Obviously, this race kind of showed that Leclerc does understand the car a bit more, does have a good feel for the car, knows how the car works, knows how to extract good performance from the car, whereas Sainz is still learning it. People are always going to have a bit of difficulty in their first race with a new team. It's learning a new car, it's learning a new everything. And testing this year has been so restricted. They barely know the car before they're off in them trying to race them. So a decent job from him. Hopefully we'll see him progress a little bit higher up the grid moving forwards, kind of on par with Leclerc. And I think the Ferraris and the McLarens are going to be fighting all season. I think definitely for P3. They're going to be the cars that pick up the podiums when the other 2 teams don't do so well or have issues or come together. Just swinging back to Red Bull moment, I think that could be our only issue with having a season-long fight between Red Bull and Mercedes is the reliability. We saw a lot of reliability issues for Red Bull this race. Perez had one at the start of the race. Verstappen seemed to be battling one for the most part. That seemed to go away, but it still was something in the background. Red Bull, Honda's reliability is a bit of a question mark, whereas Mercedes do just seem to be an iron giant in this, if that's the right phrasing. I don't think it is, but they seem almost indestructible in reliability issues. The reasons they've tended to go out in races over the past few years is because they've been in crashes or they've had damage to the car, not really been engine reliability or car failures. I think that might be the pendulum swing in Mercedes' favor, but if we can at least have racing, that would be good. I just hope on everything that sort of I'm wrong on that, and that they do kind of work out their reliability and it's not so bad. As example, Norris finishing in 4th. I think the car is net 5th. Perez probably should have, had he not had the reliability issues and had started from 11th, not the pit lane, I do think he would have been 4th. It would have been Mercedes, Red Bull, which I think is going to be the pattern we tend to notice a lot, unless Perez can put some pressure on Bottas. So the top 4 teams seem to be fairly settled. I'm confident enough to say now that throughout qualifying for the rest of the season, unless development really does change the order, but we don't tend to see that very much. Usually there's a little bit of change, a little bit of development that gives them an edge. So maybe Ferrari will get the edge on McLaren or vice versa. But over the stretch of the season, because there's so little you can do with the cars and you can't test the cars, it's really difficult to improve these cars kind of off the bat. They do see some improvement and they will see some advantages gained in aero bits and bobs that make the cars a bit faster. But overall, I'm confident enough to say that 8 of the 10 cars in Q3 will be 2 Ferraris, 2 McLarens, 2 Red Bulls, 2 Mercedes, unless any of them have issues. So I think it's going to be interesting to see. It's definitely going to be interesting to see the fight between Ferrari and McLaren. Like I was saying, I think they're very closely matched. I think McLaren has a slight speed advantage on the engine side, but Ferrari have done a lot of good to that car, and it now feels like it's a solid top 10, low top 5 contender. So it'll be interesting to see that, and I think a lot of that is also going to come down to racecraft. Obviously, in the 2 teams, Leclerc and Norris are much more confident in the machinery they're driving. They know what they're driving, whereas Sainz and Ricciardo are coming into new cars, new teams, learning new systems. So it's going to be interesting to not only see the 2 teams against each other, but to see the 2 respective drivers against each other, to see the teammates against each other. I think those 2 teams are going to be really interesting to keep an eye on through the season. They've shown some good pace off the start, and I think as well, if Sainz gets more confidence in that car and Ricciardo gets more confidence in that car, we could see them getting a bit more aggressive as well. Though I think in comparison, the McLaren does seem to be a bit more stable than the Ferrari. It's something the Ferrari seems to suffer with quite frequently, being a bit looser on the steering, losing the rear quite easily. I don't know why. I don't know any engineering or mechanical technical terms as to why that might be the case, but that's just kind of an outsider's perspective in of what it feels like. So maybe that will give the McLaren drivers a bit more confidence faster in the car, whereas the Ferrari drivers are going to have to learn to drive maybe a slightly different way than they did. Who knows? It's going to be interesting to watch. The top 10 was rounded off by hotshot Yuki Tsunoda. This kid, keep an eye on him, and it's one of the reasons I'm kind of glad that I feel like Red Bull have kind of come to that conclusion of, oh, maybe giving our young drivers a little bit more time to learn the cars and adapt to Formula One might give them a chance to be successful in the senior team. And I really do hope they do that with Tsunoda, because the pace he's shown, the AlphaTauri itself is very quick, stupidly quick. Very, very easily could be a competitor to fight for P3 with the McLaren and the Ferrari, which is insane for a team that's basically a junior team of Red Bull. They're not really designed to beat the Red Bull team, and if they do, I think Red Bull would think, maybe something's gone wrong here. But at the same time, I reckon they're very similar cars. I think in Gasly, as I've said before, Tsunoda's got a really good teammate to kind of show him the ropes, show him the way, show him everything he needs to know. It's a good team. It's a very strong team, and I think Tsunoda's really shown some very good pace, coming up 9th at the end of the Bahrain Grand Prix. Really strong race from him. So he's one to definitely keep an eye on. I just hope on everything Red Bull don't do what they did with everyone before him, and at the end of this year go buy Perez and bring Tsunoda back up, because I don't think he's ready. I didn't think Gasly was ready when they did that. I certainly didn't think Albon was ready when they brought him up in the middle of his rookie year. No, it was too fast. I think Red Bull need to stop trying to do that and give these drivers a little more of a chance to really become themselves. And I really think you could have some successful drivers. They've got some really strong drivers in their young program. So it'd be really good to give them a chance to excel. Keep an eye on Yuki Tsunoda. He's definitely one that I think will be interesting and fun to watch. I think he's got some really good racecraft, and given the opportunity, he's gonna go for positions. So it'll be very, very interesting to see how he progresses through this season. And rounding off the top 10, we have Lance Stroll in the Aston Martin, one of our 4 A's this season, which is not confusing at all. It seems a lot slower than it did last year, which in all honesty, I'm not super surprised about. In comparing the Aston Martin to the Racing Point from last year, sorry, or the Tracing Point, or the Pink Mercedes, or whatever you wanted to call it last year. I think the rules have definitely locked down what Racing Point did last year, which has meant they can't necessarily do what they wanted to this year. So I feel like they are lacking a bit in pace compared to last year. I don't think they're in the fight for P3 this year. I think the fight for P3 will be definitely Ferrari and McLaren, and maybe AlphaTauri will sometimes jump in there, but I think AlphaTauri is a safe fifth if I'm making predictions for the end of the season right now. Vettel didn't have the nicest time in his Aston Martin outing. He obviously got the penalty for, well, he got disrupted in qualifying anyway, which meant he couldn't get out of Q1. Then he got the 3-place grid penalty for speeding on the yellows in Q1, and then he got another penalty maybe for something else. Oh, he drove into Ocon. Yeah, forgot about that. So not the best race for Vettel, and I think it's really important that he gets his mojo back, because the concerning thing is, if he continues to kind of drive as he has in the last few years, a lot of people were saying maybe it's the Ferrari pressure, maybe it's the Leclerc pressure, which I was happy to believe and kind of feel like he felt he was losing his place in the team, so he was overdriving the car, which was resulting into some silly mistakes. Can completely believe that and can completely get behind that. But when he moves to another team and these start recurring again, silly. I mean, okay, we'll give him a slight benefit of the doubt. His tyres locked up. Okay, when you lock up tyres in a car, that's it. You don't really have a lot more control over it. So we'll give him a slight benefit of the doubt for the Ocon incident in the race. But he needs to stop having them, because it's doing no good for his reputation. It's doing no good for the way people perceive him as a driver. He just seems to be very incident prone at the moment. And I don't know. It just feels like he needs a good race, that's for sure, to kind of shake him out of it. It's a difficult one. It's a really difficult one. And I think as well, the way he was dropped from Ferrari is not probably sat well with him. Wouldn't sit well with me. I'd be fairly miffed off about it. So yeah, it's just kind of, he's got to get back into the swing of it. I don't know what he's got to do, because I don't know where his head's at, but he's got to get back into the swing of it, and he really needs to start having some clean races. Even if they're clean races for like P10, P9, couple of points, he needs to get a bit more consistency. That's what I'm trying to say. And also the team isn't as fast as it was last year, which I think is having a slight impact. Maybe, I mean, it shouldn't have any impact on Vettel. He's used to driving slow cars. We'll keep an eye on Vettel, see how he goes in the next few races. I think if he can settle a bit more, and okay, there are a couple of factors in this race that didn't play out for him. So let's give him the benefit of the doubt and let's see what happens in the next few races. But if it's the same, if I'm saying the same thing in the next couple of episodes' time, that's not good news. Alfa Romeo coming back, being a fairly consistently strong team. They seem faster than they were last year, which is good for Ferrari, because they're obviously running Ferrari engines, and so it does show a progressive step from Ferrari, which is always a good thing. But a solid race from Raikkonen and Giovinazzi, as per usual. They don't tend to do anything spectacular, but they're there, they're racing. I mean, Raikkonen's racing because he wants to race. I still don't understand why Giovinazzi's there. Even after watching the third season of Drive to Survive, it still doesn't make sense, because Callum Ilott was available. If Mick Schumacher got signed by Haas, you could have signed Callum Ilott, Ferrari young driver. Much better than Giovinazzi in my opinion, but whatever. I don't think they're going to be competing much higher than they were. Low points will be what they grabbed through the season. They're kind of at the moment, I think, heading the back end of the pack. To me, this year, we have a very clear front, middle, back of the pack. And unfortunately, the season I'm about to talk about kind of all fall towards the latter there. Interesting race from Alpine. Definitely not very quick, this car. It's a very interesting car to look at because it's very chunky. The air intake at the back, if you look at it head on, it's very chunky. I'm not the first to say that, I know that. It's an interesting design for sure, but it doesn't feel very fast. And I think, you know, Fernando Alonso's an exceptional driver. To come out back to the sport 2 years later and still be as good as you were having been 2 years out the car, you can't knock the guy. He's a sensational driver. He will drag a bad car. He's very good at doing it. Sadly, he's had a lot of experience. And I think that's kind of testament to the position it was in. Whenever Alonso's in a car, I do tend to look at his teammate to get more of a relative pace of the car because Alonso is very, very good, as I've said. I think Ocon's P13, I think they're at a similar place as Alfa Romeo. Like I said, it's kind of that next group of cars. I think they might pick up some cheeky points. I don't think they get more than a 10th or a 9th though. I just don't think the car is fast enough, which is a little bit of a fall from grace from their last year's performance where they were fighting with Racing Point and McLaren for P3 in the Constructors' title. So not quite sure what's going on with Alpine, but definitely not as fast as they were last year. And I don't expect to see a lot of exciting things from them. Obviously, a bit of a shame for Alonso to not finish because of the sandwich wrapper that blew into his car, I think, or into his brakes. That's what happened, because his brakes were overheating. Bit of a shame for him not to finish, because I do think he might have picked up a couple of points, maybe, for the team, which would have been a good start to the season, but c'est la vie, life goes as it goes. Other teams down there, obviously Williams, still, even though with the new financial backing, it's going to take a bit of time for them to work up the grid. You've got to remember that they've got to close this gap, and the gap is constantly the benchmark's constantly going to be moving, because you would expect the other teams to consistently keep evolving as well. So closing the gap is going to be harder, but I definitely think they're more competitive than they were last season. They're more in the fight with Alpine and with Alfa Romeo. I think maybe Aston Martin is kind of also at the edge of that gap as well. Again, I think they'll get some good fluke races, but I don't think it's going to be consistently strong for them. So I do feel like there's a lot more gaps from the front to the back. It does feel like there's a bit more of a divide, which is not necessarily a good thing when half the grid is racing for P9 and P10, and you know, the top 8 spots are kind of already fitted. It's not the best, especially with the engine freezers coming in, a little bit concerning, but Williams are moving up. They are progressing slowly, but they are progressing. And a lot of the teams are running very similar cars to what they did last year because COVID, basically, for want of a better explanation. Hopefully in the next few years we will see them boost. Hopefully we'll see the grid condense as well, because I think last season in comparison we had a very condensed grid, whereas this season it does feel a bit more stretched out from the front to the back, which is a little bit concerning, but at least we've got more cars on the front side of it, if you know what I mean, on the right side of the 30-second gap to the rest of the grid. But we'll see how the racing evolves. And finally, Haas. Not the best race for Haas. One of their drivers going out in the first corner. I'll just leave that there. And a solid first race for Schumacher. Obviously, he also had the spin at the start, but he managed to recover from, you know, that. To kind of take it a little bit, that is luck. That he had his spin in a place where Bahrain's covered in a lot of runoff anyway, if you've ever played it on any of the games. I love racing that one because I can go so wide and it doesn't matter because I don't lose any time because it's all tarmac runoff, which is a bit of a... But there we go, that's the way Bahrain is made. So it was kind of luck that saw one of them retire and one of them not, but you know, they're both learning the car. It's a new car, it's a new series. It's not the best car either. I'd easily say the Haas is the worst car on the grid. So I don't expect magical, amazing things. If I was Schumacher, I'd be looking to get out of it. So maybe Alfa Romeo, kind of ASAP, because it's a better team. But yeah, that kind of sums up the Bahrain Grand Prix. I think it's one of the most entertaining races I've watched in a while, and that's saying something for Formula One. I think it actively had me watching for the entire 50, 60 odd laps we had. So that's always a good thing. It's good to see that maybe it's a little bit more entertaining. We seem to have secured battles, especially closer to the front, where we've got two teams battling each other at the front, which if that can remain for the rest of the season, isn't going to be so great for the latter half of the grid, but it is good for an entertainment standpoint. So hopefully these things are happening in the right direction, and hopefully the cars are getting closer, and hopefully we'll actually have races, and hopefully the engine freeze won't do us over too bad for the next few years. But Imola is next, a while away. It's a lot of people just want racing back, and the good thing is we do have other racing series, like Extreme E started on the weekend, Formula E is back this weekend, MotoGP's been going on. What else we had? Ferrari Challenge Europe is coming up this weekend. There's a lot of other race series, which I think if you are missing Formula One, go check out something else. Extreme E, apart from the final, was completely available on YouTube. Formula E is exactly the same. It's available on YouTube apart from the race. Gosh, just because it's rights and geo-blocking and yada yada. You can get hold of it in other places. Eurosport do run the Formula E races. Sky had the... Sky Action, I think was the channel I watched it on, had the Extreme E race. MotoGP is obviously around. WEC is coming up soon at the end of the month. So there's plenty of other motorsport to go watch. And I think with these breaks, it's a good chance to kind of test out the water and try out some different race series and see what else motorsport has to offer. So if you're bored and want more motorsport, hell, I've got this. I hope this helped. I've got an Extreme E one of these coming up later today. So do keep an eye and have a watch of that. I'm going to start expanding Track Talk a little bit as well. Talk about some different series. Maybe I'll do a WEC prologue type thing later on this month as well to kind of get that going. Who knows? Let me know if there's any race series you want to see me cover. If they're ones I watch anyway, then for sure I will. If they're ones I don't watch, maybe not, because I watch a lot of motorsport. So chances are you'll pick one I already watch anyway. Do let me know what you thought of the Bahrain Grand Prix, whether you think Red Bull is actually in for a shout with the championship, if we're going to have the Verstappen-Hamilton fight this season, or if it's just a bit of a fluke for the opening season. And Mercedes are going to come back and steamroll us all, and we're all going to be super sad because it was all fake in the first place. But let me know your thoughts of the race, let me know your thoughts of the upcoming races, and again, let me know of any other motorsports you want to see me talk about on Track Talk. But for now, thank you so much for hanging out with me today. It's been an absolute blast, as always. If you enjoyed this video, go show that like button some good old-fashioned love. And if you want to support the channel, go hit subscribe and ring that bell so you don't miss next time I upload a video. Stay awesome, and I will see you all in the next video! Okay, 3 layers is too much. I think the heating's on as well. Yep, heating's on, 3 layers. I'm relatively warm right now.